What's up, everybody? I hope you're doing well, and I sure hope it's not too presumptuous of me to consider myself an entrepreneur, because I sure feel like one. So I looked up the definition of entrepreneur, and according to entrepreneur.com, entrepreneurs tend to, quote, come up with ideas that haven't been tested, diagnosed, or worked through, while small business owners may, quote, make calculated decisions where the outcome is clear. So to me, I take that to mean that somebody who's starting a business as an entrepreneur is doing something that's innovative, hasn't really been done before, is kind of risky, hasn't been like tried and tested and true. And so for me, when I started Private Practice Skills in 2018, I cannot believe it's been 4 years this summer, no one was really doing quite what I was trying to create. Now, particularly on YouTube, there's very few other people in this sphere, even to this day, doing the kind of content that I'm making about private practice. And I also have my own sort of particular bent about how I approach this topic that I think is unique and hadn't really been tried and tested by 2018. So when I started Private Practice Skills, I had no concrete idea about whether it would work or not based on any sort of data, because no one had quite made something like this up till then. But I really believed that it was gonna work. And so far, it has. And if you haven't watched my videos before, welcome to Private Practice Skills. I'm Dr. Marie Fang. I work 2 days a week, and I split my time between my therapy private practice and making content for Private Practice Skills 50-50. And at this point, Private Practice Skills accounts for about 80% of my income. So I've really arrived at the goal that I set out for myself. And now that I've been doing this thing for 4 years, I've seen success. I did the thing I set out to do. I'm starting to enter this kind of interesting headspace, because now that I've been doing it for a little bit, I've started to see the sort of underbelly of the entrepreneurial life. And if I'm being totally honest, I've just been struck by how many times I meet entrepreneurs who are doing the thing they set out to do, earning the income they set out to earn, and then some, and like changing the world in a positive, influential, meaningful way, who are totally unhappy. So this left me thinking about how I feel about the fact that I'm an entrepreneur. And I can say this from experience as well. Given the innovative nature of being an entrepreneur, by definition, your brain is just kind of thinking, eating, breathing, sleeping, whatever business, whatever entrepreneurial venture you're leaning into, because you are creating stuff that has never been created before. And if you live in that brain space 24/7 without some sort of regular breaks, it will wear on you. And I've started to notice that there's this little lie that can creep in for a lot of folks in this kind of position. Sometimes I can be tempted to believe it as well. And it's this idea of, once I make it to that next milestone in my business, then I'll be happy. Or then I'll feel like I succeeded at what I set out to do. Or then maybe I'll be the best in my niche, in my whatever it is that I'm doing. But after a certain point in your business, what tends to happen is then you meet that next milestone, and then the one after that, and it keeps going, and you're still feeling just as unhappy as you were when you said, if I just meet that next milestone, then I'll be happy. Now, I know not everyone who watches this channel is interested in entering in this sort of entrepreneurial, innovative space in their businesses, but I know there are a number of you who ask me about how I started my sort of side gig as a therapist. And also, I really wish I could have had this video when I was first venturing into entrepreneurial land. So in this video, I'm going to share all the little ins and outs of being an entrepreneur that I've learned so far in the last 4 years of this entrepreneurial venture. The good, the bad, and the ugly. And I'll also offer some tips at the end of, how to go about an entrepreneurial pursuit in a healthy, sustainable way. So let's start with the good. And I think a lot of these just feel obvious. I mean, these are the reasons why so many of us at least find it an appealing idea to think about or daydream about becoming an entrepreneur, because the good is so good. It's so good. Let's get into the list. I think, to me, the best part of being an entrepreneur, more than anything else, is the ability to innovate something completely from scratch by nobody else's design or instruction. It's just me, and I am going to create something new that nobody else has, using just what's in between here and here to make it happen. That is incredibly rewarding, and I still enjoy that every single time. And along the same lines, another great aspect of entrepreneurship is you can help solve a problem in a way that's completely unique that nobody has done before. So for me, I really wanted to make it easy and accessible to start and grow your private practice, because when I started mine, it felt completely inaccessible, out of budget, not possible. And so I'm hoping to solve a problem that exists in the world. Theoretically, if I'm doing a good job at that, then I can experience the reward of offering that solution. Another amazing pro of being an entrepreneur is you can create a job that fully aligns with your values and passions. You don't have to try to make yourself align with some other employer's preferences and values or brand. You get to do exactly what you care about, what aligns with you, and all the things affiliated with it, like setting your own work hours and deciding what's even in your job description. If there's something that most people do, but you don't want to do it, you don't have to do it, or you can hire it out if you want to. So you get to build your life and your job exactly how you want to. And of course, another huge reason why people pursue becoming an entrepreneur is they want to increase their income. And it is absolutely true. When you are building something of your own, rather than working for somebody else, there's endless potential for scaling your income upwards. If you've built something relatively small and had success with that, then you can just keep scaling and replicating it larger and larger and increasing your income with it if you want. And another aspect of being an entrepreneur that I really love, and I don't often hear people talk about in this space, is just how intrinsically rewarding it is to use parts of my brain that otherwise don't tend to get exercised in a workplace setting. And there's this like creative, project-based, problem-solving focused part of my brain that is always on. And I think that is an entrepreneurial part of me that's always been there. And it plays out in like, how do I fix this leaky faucet? How do I convert my garden into an ecologically friendly wildlife oasis? How do I fix my broken car? How do I create this macrame wall hanging that I've never seen done before? Like, this is what my brain thinks about at midnight when I'm trying to fall asleep, which I know is very privileged that I don't have real problems that I'm worrying about, but there's a part of my brain that has to be exercised, and it will find a way. So if I give it an opportunity through a work and income generating context to be exercised, then that part of my brain can go to sleep at night. Now, if I ended this video here, I think everyone would be like, let's become an entrepreneur tomorrow. But there are also some not so cute parts related to being an entrepreneur, and it's important to take the good with the bad. So let's talk about some of the bad parts of being an entrepreneur. I think top of this list, it's possible to get so sucked into whatever you're innovating and creating that you work way more hours than you ever worked before, than you ever thought you would be willing to work. And this is kind of the underbelly of doing something that you're so passionate about, so interested in innovating in, that you're willing to just dedicate so much of your blood, sweat, and tears to this thing. Whereas if you were working for an employer in a more traditional setting, you might say, okay, it's 5, I'm clocking out. I'm not going to check my email. I'll be back tomorrow. And as an entrepreneur, it's like, but this thing I'm building, I want to make it the best or make it better than it was before. And I want to make sure I didn't mess this thing up. So I'm going to double check because it has my name on it. So I want to get it right. There's a lot of potential to really overwork yourself. I have been there myself. As much as I love working part-time right now, even then, I will feel that guilt in my brain, like I'm supposed to be working more. I can't tell you how hard it is to turn off that part of my brain sometimes. And when I first got started, I was working those wild hours because I was working my usual full-time job and building private practice skills from nothing on the side, which was probably an extra 20 to 40 hours a week on top of my usual job. But I loved it. but it was a lot of work. Another downside of being an entrepreneur is I think because we're taking such a big risk innovating in spaces that haven't been innovated in before, it can be really tempting to try to overly lean into trending things as a way to have a sense of security, of foundation. So it might be like, what social media platform is trending right now? Or, are you doing podcasts or videos or blogs, or are you getting featured in this XYZ thing? Are you offering this sort of course or membership? Or, if you're creating a physical product, are you keeping up with whatever the modern trends are? And it can be so tempting to just always feel like if you're not keeping up with whatever's trending, then you're behind, because it can, I think, offer a sense of maybe false security of like, I'm making this new thing, but I'm doing it on this tried and true platform or something like that. And I think for similar reasons, another potential downside of being an entrepreneur is that it can be so easy to compare yourself to what other entrepreneurs are doing. Again, because there's something really risky about what we're doing. It doesn't have an inherent stability to it that we can feel. And so we might see, okay, well, what's so-and-so doing? If somebody else is doing something a little bit similar, a little bit parallel to what they're doing this other new thing. Oh, I'm behind. I need to try to keep up, because who knows, this whole thing could fall apart at any moment, because that is kind of part of the risk of being an entrepreneur. The next potential downside of being an entrepreneur, I don't think is necessarily universal, but I feel it and I see it come up for a lot of folks. And that's that folks who have the entrepreneurial, gift, X factor, whatever it might be, tend to never feel satisfied. So you might have this dream, I'm gonna build this thing, and then you go build the thing and you still feel like, okay, now I have to go to the next thing. What else am I gonna do? Because innovation is a huge part of the space, the mindset that kind of we thrive in. And so if you already accomplished the thing that you set out to do, your mind is already on to innovating the next thing. And it's really possible to just kind of miss what you already have done, already have built, and kind of be grateful for it. And another potential downside of being an entrepreneur is that it can become possible to just start overly chasing income, or maybe like the next big innovation, rather than chasing our own happiness and our own kind of well-rounded set of values as a whole. I don't think I've quite fallen into that trap, at least not in any major way, but I can totally see how it happens, because the entrepreneurial mindset is one where you're trying to get your passions, inherent passions and values, to align with an option that generates income. And so you lean into those passions and values, and then eventually as it starts earning you income, it can be reinforcing, not only because you're doing something you love, but because it's paying the bills. And then it can kind of start to shift gears over time, where now instead of it being like, what's this thing that I really love, I want to do it whether it makes money or not, it's, well, does it make money? Is it going to scale my income? And it can be so tempting to just get overly focused on that, because we needed it to be part of our focus from the beginning, that we lose sight of why we actually started. And that is the space where people tend to burn out. So it's helpful for many reasons to avoid going down that road. Okay, so I imagine that at least some of you who clicked on this video are at least interested in exploring whether entrepreneurship might be right for you. So here's some of my advice for those of you who might be interested in pursuing being an entrepreneur. My number one absolute top tip is to focus on doing something that you absolutely love. If it's not something that you're willing to get up at 4 a.m. and kind of like daydream and problem solve about, then it's not a right fit for you to be an entrepreneur in that space. In order to be a successful entrepreneur, it has to be something that you're willing to kind of dedicate a huge amount of your brain space to in an ongoing way. So it has to be something that you inherently love and find joy in. And the next piece of advice is to ask yourself, what will make you feel genuinely happy in your life, not just in the business, but taking a picture of your life as a whole. Because what can happen is if we start to have an entrepreneurial mindset and we're building this business, this product, this service, whatever it is, we're innovating, and we don't take into account all the other aspects of our lives that are also important to us, it can have the potential to take over. And I see that happen for so many folks. I am really grateful. This is something that I think I hit the nail on the head when I made Private Practice Skills, that part of my goal with private practice skills is I wanted to be able to work part-time while still earning more income than I was while working full-time, because I wanted to be with kids. I didn't have kids yet when I started private practice skills, and I wanted to have them, and I wanted to be part-time. So private practice skills was something that fit into this bigger picture of satisfaction and happiness, and I have been able to achieve that and hold that picture in mind in those moments where I'm like, ooh, but I could work a little bit more. Ooh, I could earn a little, I could make this other new thing, and it'll take me a little more time, but it's going to be time away from my kids, or time away hanging out with my husband, or doing other things that I love doing. I love seeing my friends and gardening and being outside and going to the beach because I moved to San Diego, and that's kind of the point, right? Those are just some things that make me happy, but make sure you know what makes you happy. Maybe it does look like working full-time or even 60 hours a week or whatever it is, but understand that full picture before you set out into it so you can hold those boundaries. And that leads us straight into the next tip, which is to ruthlessly hold on to your boundaries. Absolutely ruthlessly. Do not slide on your boundaries as far as, differentiation between your work and your family life, or your work and your loved one's life, or your work and whatever else brings you value and importance and meaning in life. If you created a boundary, whether it's how many hours you work, or I'm not going to pick up my phone during dinner, or, whatever it is, hold those boundaries absolutely ruthlessly, because you will be tempted to let your work creep into the rest of your life if you truly choose to do something in an entrepreneurial space that you love. It's just the way that it goes. And that's great news, because you're choosing something that you love. You love it so much, you're almost willing to sacrifice the other things that you also love. But it's important to hold that boundary. Another piece of advice that may not necessarily apply to everyone in quite the same way as it does for me, at least, is if you can, create space for creative bursts of energy, and then intentionally take breaks from creating. As we've talked about, the nature of being an entrepreneur is that you're innovating, you're creating, you're entering a space that hasn't been entered before, or in a way that's never been done before. So the creative part of your brain is it's like your little baby that you need to take care of. And if we push the creative part of our brain to keep creating, even beyond what it's able to, then it shuts down. It just fries. So in order to actually create good content, products, services, whatever, we need to nurture that part of us. And in order to do that, we have to take breaks. And another piece of advice that maybe not everyone will need, but I think some people do, is to set a goal income number. And when you arrive at that number, let it be enough. Now, that doesn't mean that you're not allowed to earn more income after you reach that goal number, but what I see happen is folks reach that goal number and it's not enough. Nope, it's a new goal now. And then you reach the new goal, that's not enough. And it just keeps going and going, and you'd be amazed how high that number can become, and it's still not enough. Now, I realize by the sounds of things, the way I'm talking in this video, I might make it just seem like all entrepreneurs are just in this doom and gloom, unsatisfied, unhappy state. And I don't believe that that's true. I do think, though, that there's kind of a unique storm and cluster of factors that combine together that by default, if we're not intentional, then as entrepreneurs, it is so easy to just slide into an unhealthy pattern of behaviors where work just takes up more of our brain space, more of our time, takes time away from the things that we also care about and love, the people that we love. And so in order to have happiness as an entrepreneur, I absolutely think it is required to be intentional about setting those boundaries, doing your mindfulness practices, doing whatever it might be for you, but it has to come intentionally to build the life that you feel satisfied with, rather than just assuming that it comes by default because, you reached a certain income point or whatever you think it might be that would bring you happiness. You'd be surprised. That's not the thing that ends up bringing you the happiness. Well, I know this was a little bit more of a behind the curtain sort of real talk type video, but it feels important to share. I hear a lot of folks ask about how I built my side hustle, and it sounds so jazzy and easy, I just work part-time and you can do it too, and it's true. but also there's a lot of good and bad that come together, and it's important to be mindful of all of those things before you set off into your own entrepreneurial venture if that's something you're interested in. And before we close, I'd like to thank TherapyNotes.com for sponsoring this video. TherapyNotes helps with all of your practice management needs, from scheduling to notes to billing. They have a HIPAA-secure telehealth platform for free for all of its users. So if you'd like to check out TherapyNotes, you can get 2 months to try it for free with no commitment just by clicking the link in the description of this video. Well, I hope you found this video helpful, whether you're an entrepreneur, thinking about becoming an entrepreneur, or you have no interest, but it's just kind of fun to look at it from afar. I am curious if you are an entrepreneur or you're thinking about pursuing some kind of entrepreneurial venture. Let folks know in the comments what some of the reasons are that you're interested in pursuing that, because I think that's really interesting and can be quite different from person to person. And until next time, from one therapist to another, I wish you well.